Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. We are here, myself, Susan and Gordon. I'm Sharon Smith. I'm a Senior Education Officer at the General Teaching Council for Scotland, and we're looking forward to having a brief conversation this afternoon about the power of PRD. So before I start asking these colleagues some questions about their experiences of PRD as reviewees, I'd like to introduce them both. They are actually both reviewers as well as reviewees, but I think today they've got a power of knowledge that they can discuss with us, and look forward to hearing their experiences and advice. So Susan, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Hello everyone, my name is Susan Ward. I am recently appointed head teacher at Kingsland Primary School down in Peebles in the Scottish Borders. And prior to that, I was depute head teacher in the same school for a number of years. And I've been working in the Borders for about almost 10 years now.
Thank you. And Gordon?
Hello everybody, my name's Gordon Wood. I am Depute Head Teacher at St Andrews High School in Kirkcaldy in Fife. I've been at St Andrews High for 11 years now as Depute, and I've been teaching for 28 years now. So I look forward to the discussion this afternoon.
Perfect. Lots of experience to draw on, that's for sure. Prior to this recording, we were talking about unlocking the potential of PRD document. I hope you can see it there on the screens. And actually, it's like an opportunity for me to advertise this and share this with colleagues across Scotland. You can find it on our website in gtcs.org.uk under the professional update section, and PRD, you'll find it in there. And actually, today's really just to talk about really the power of PRD and the benefits it can bring to us as teachers. Certainly from my experience, as I've talked with colleagues across Scotland, PRD can be seen as an additional thing, and I just really want to hear your experiences about what it's been like for yourselves. So Susan, if you could tell me a bit about your own PRD experience and how it made you feel, really.
Yeah, certainly. I think you're right, Sharon. I do think that PRD in schools is no matter, even in a non-pandemic situation, it's met with a slight eye roll from teachers. It does seem to be synonymous with additional workload and that kind of pressure. It always seems to fall at a pressurised time of year, and I often think that about PRD. It's something that teachers associate with the summer term, but actually sometimes the summer term is not the best time to be having that conversation. So I think for me, my experience of PRD has always been that it's been a really rich conversation. There's always been lots of challenge associated with it, and I have felt that it's something that's moved my practice on. And I think those are the reasons that a PRD matters. Is something you have to make time for as a teacher or whatever your role is in education. I think it's important to carve out that time, crucially important, but it has to be, if a teacher is going to the trouble of carving out the time, the experience of the PRD has to be worthwhile. And that has always been what my experience has been as a reviewee. I started my career in the city of Edinburgh, and as a young teacher, it was crucial for me. I worked in a big school, and I wanted to do well, and I wanted to get ahead, and I needed those conversations to help me channel that and focus in on what it was in my practice I specifically wanted to get better at. And then at different points in my career, as I've got older and moved to the Borders and had a family of my own, that conversation was more around balancing the other priorities that had come into my life. It's always been I've always valued the PRD. It's always been a chance to have that rich conversation, and to celebrate what you've achieved that year and focus on what you want to achieve next. And sometimes it's a really challenging conversation depending on how things are going for you, but that's why we're here. I know that's why Gordon and I are both here, Sharon, because we're team PRD, but it does need to be worthwhile. And I think for teachers, my big message would be, if it feels like you're ticking boxes, you need to challenge that, because you deserve so much more. Teaching is such a demanding profession, and you deserve 60 unadulterated minutes to just talk about you and your craft as a teacher and how you can get better. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Great, thank you, Susan. What about yourself, Gordon?
Yeah, very similar to what Susan was saying. I mean, I've always found it a very positive experience and had really a chance to self-evaluate my own practice, what I'm meant to be doing, what I'm trying to do, and perhaps how I can improve. And I find that self-evaluation against the whatever standard it might be appropriate to you as a teacher can be really powerful. I get on very well with my line manager, my head teacher, and it's more a natural conversation, bit of a coaching conversation from the head teacher's perspective, but it does challenge you to think about, am I on the right lines about what I think or where I think I should be trying to find areas for professional development and courses or reading or whatever it might be. And my head teacher is very good at helping to guide that conversation. And maybe I'm going off on a tangent one year and he'll help to pull that back. But it's a great way for me to reflect and to hopefully move forward and improve as a teacher.
I love that you've mentioned the coaching there, because actually for me that has to be the heart of PRD. But to have the good coaching conversation, you need to have that trust already between reviewer and reviewee, don't you? So it can be, if that relationship is a new relationship, a coaching conversation can be difficult. You're not necessarily expecting or understanding why you might be asked challenging questions to probe your thinking further. But once you have that understanding of what coaching is and you've built a bit more of a professional relationship and know each other a bit better, there's so much power in a coaching conversation, because really it does help you think more, because actually quite often just think quite superficially, and actually really thinking about why we want to do something or why we want our learning to go in a certain direction and be asked deeper questions about that, it's just wonderful. And we only really have that in those really formal PRDs, but we can have these conversations and ongoing professional learning conversations throughout the year as well. So you've both spoken about your experiences, but why do you think that PRDs are important specifically? Gordon, what do you think?
I think it's a bit like Susan had mentioned, you get in that 60 minutes about you and about how you can hopefully improve as a professional person, and maybe where you want to go with your career as well. And it's just nice for me. It's just nice to have that time set aside that you've planned for. It's taken your time to plan for that, and you've self-evaluated. You've considered what professional learning you've been through during the session, and you're thinking about what do I need to do for next session as well, and it all together just think there's a lot to be gained from taking it seriously and doing it properly, rather than it being a ticky box exercise.
Brilliant. Susan?
I think for me, the crucial thing that has to come out of a PRD for anyone is you should have a plan for what's coming next. So in education, we're always trying to make everything better all at once, and actually taking time to strategically plan for what you're going to drill down into and why. That to me is a nourishing thing, but it's actually a time saving thing and probably a sanity saving thing for that incoming 12 months. You can't fix everything all in one go, so we have to be really targeted in what it is we want to achieve. And I think supporting, having that conversation as a reviewer and as a reviewee, I always feel as if that's where the most value is gained. You really drill down into what's worked really well, what's been really hard, what's been I talk to teachers quite often when I'm in the role of reviewer, of having what's been a stone in your shoe, what's just niggled away at you that we need to get into, and lots of discussion about that. And as you described, Gordon, those coaching conversation techniques I think are critically important. But the question, Sharon, you asked is, why do I think PRDs are important? They're important because that is the time where you're getting the blueprints out for what's coming in the next 12 months. How are we going to plan for what's coming next? And as a reviewee, what I feel is you've got that idea of the plan, which, as I say, is critical because you need to know what you're going to be focused on and target in on that. But it's also an opportunity to be listened to to be heard, you know, to be valued, to be noticed, to have your contribution that you're making to the huge machine you work in, whether you've got 400 children like we do down in Kingsland, or whether you've got 40, or whether you've got 4,000. You know, you are playing a critical role, and it's an opportunity to have that recognised. So I feel it's nourishing on two fronts. It's nourishing because it's helping you plan what's coming next and be clear about it, but it's also your line manager, whoever's doing your PRD, taking the time to say, do you know what? See what you're doing and that level of contribution you're making here. What a difference. Thank you for what you're doing. I so appreciate it. And, you know, I'm listening to what you're saying, and it's making me think we could do this and we could do that. And, you know, it feeds into that broader picture of school improvement. You know, every PRD, you know, your engagement, I'm going to go on about this a lot, I know, but I feel my message for teachers is you need to authentically engage with the PRD process. Don't accept a tick box and don't rush it and just waffle through it to get it done, because actually you engaging with it authentically will help your school move forward, because whoever's doing your PRD will be collecting up all those little nuggets from all the different PRDs, thinking, okay, there's a real will here for us to do this, or we need to move forward with that, or lots of people are finding this. So you need to be honest and really engage with it for your own benefit, but also for the wider, the good of the school. And ultimately that's what impacts learners. And I often find with teachers, you know, we're so good at putting everyone in front of ourselves. There's always someone in the queue that needs to be, needs that nourishing, needs that support more than we feel we do. But actually, the PRD is a huge example of a time where if you really engage with that, you're doing everybody good, not just yourself. But you should come out of your PRD with a plan going forward and feeling like you've been listened to. And that's why it's the most important 60 minutes of the year in loads of ways. And it breaks my heart when I see people squeezing them in, or, you know, it's a 20-minute conversation and it's interrupted 4 times with a phone call. And, you know, it has to be protected time, because, well, this conversation, Sharon's called The Power of PRD, and it's such a powerful thing. It's a hugely powerful thing that will just drive good. It will drive good within our schools if we give it the chance.
And I think, Susan, what you're saying there is so important, particularly now, because now we're in this time of recovery, and actually we really have to reassess what we do, what we've done well, what is truly valuable to us, what are we investing our time in, and actually, is that necessary? Could we be better investing our time in other aspects of our professional learning to move the school and to move education forward in the way we want it to be? And it's our soldiers on the ground, it's our teachers who have those nuggets, these golden nuggets of information that they may not share publicly in the staff room, but they most definitely should be sharing those desires and those wishes in a PRD, because actually your reviewer, as you say, is going to be collating that, and that will help inform strategic conversations within school about where the school might be going next with their recovery and their plans going forward thereafter, you know. So it's now really for me a big time about being that enabler, being empowered, being an agent of change, and really capitalizing on your entitlement to that. Because if you don't, you've had a chance, you've had an opportunity to get your voice on the table. You may be choosing not to do it, but your opportunity is there. So for me, it's really important that we do use that and we use it well. So pandemic and lockdown and all the rest of it. You know, last year, as I said, we did the PRD week and to try and support teachers through what PRD might look like whilst teaching from home. And this year, I know we're back in school this time of year, and it's not to say that official PRD conversations need to be done at the end of the school year, but more often than not, they are. So if teachers are finding themselves at this time of year expecting a PRD, what might that look like? So what was yours like last year whilst we were in the midst of lockdown? And if you've had one this year, has it been any different? What did it look like, you know, sound like and feel like for you both? Susan, do you want to start, and then we'll hear what Gordon's got to say? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Well, protecting PRD was a key strategy for us. We felt as a senior leadership team last year it was crucially important that PRDs happened, and they obviously had to happen over video calls, which was interesting in and of itself. But for all the reasons I've said that I won't go back over, Sharon, you know, we really wanted the PRDs to happen. We felt that was important, and obviously we couldn't do PRDs for staff if we weren't experiencing them ourselves. So my PRD last year was from home, and yeah, we had 90 million other things that we needed to be focusing on, but it is that commitment to this is the hour. And I think what you said, Gordon, about, you know, having that relationship with your head teacher is quite key. And I think the pandemic brought that home. We spent quite a lot of time carefully planning who delivered PRDs or who engaged in those conversations with staff. Because we felt it needed to be someone that would be able to A, protect the time, and B, really support the discussion to pin it down into what mattered. And that was the part that I think was challenging for me. In my PRD last year, my head teacher, you know, kept saying, yes, but we're not talking about them. This is about you. This is about you, you know, and it's that skill of being able to really look inward. And I think last year we were in such, I even now in my head, I compare it to the Wizard of Oz when Dorothy's in the middle of the, what is it, the tornado, or the, you know, that's what the PRD is. You need to get right into the eye of that storm and have a really focused conversation. And it helped me a lot. And for me, and I don't mind sharing with you, that it was focused around work-life balance, because what I was finding working from home was that I had just done that. You know, I had no off switch. I was at home, the work was there all the time, and I couldn't make it stop. And I needed my PRD to kind of, make me, you know, be challenged on that. And the conversation we had was very different to what we would have in any other year, because we were in such exceptional times. But it was important for me because I needed to reflect on that. And the power of a coaching conversation, as we all know, is it's not the other person that's telling you. You know, my head teacher didn't say to me, you have to stop. You know, through her careful questioning, I knew from the responses I was giving, there are red flags here. We have to look at what we're doing. And you know, that supported me to look at my own balance. And then in turn, when I went to do PRDs for others, I was so mindful of that because I'd had that experience myself. Whereas if I'd just gone into it in the wind tunnel, it would have looked and felt quite different. So last year that was kind of how that went for me. And then this year I've actually had my PRD for this year because my head teacher retired just before the Easter holidays. I took up post on the 19th of April, so we both felt that that was going to be important for us. We were working so closely for the handover of the school anyway, that you know, that was a different kind of conversation because of where I had moved to and the point I've now reached of taking on headship. But PRD for us, and in my relationship with my head teacher, who I've worked for well, since I've been at Kingsland, so nearly 7 years, we reflected on that, how our PRDs are sort of the signposts. They were the markers in our relationship almost, and in my development in the roles I've had to get to the point I've reached now of taking on a headship. So more important than ever, and that won't go away. And one of the big things we're focusing on in schools just now, isn't it, is this idea of building back better. That's the language, and I think that's right. But a key strategy, a key way that we will build back better in Scottish education is by respecting and honouring and authentically engaging with PRD. We have to support those rich conversations about how has this affected you? What can I do to help you? How do we move forward from here? What have you learned? Wow, look what you were thinking of doing and look what you've learned now. And what are we going to do with that? You know, there's so much good, rich stuff that has come out, but that's the rocket fuel to me. PRDs are the rocket fuel for how we build back better in Scottish education. So yeah, but it isn't a case of, oh, we're in the pandemic, we're under pressure, so that's a breakable plate. It's absolutely not. Can't be. We can't let that happen.
Gordon, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, when you're in school, I don't know about your own experiences, but I'm sure it's similar where you feel that you're going at 100 mile an hour all the time, and never getting a chance to almost pause. I remember working from home and wondering if it would be different, but it didn't appear to be. as what Susan was saying about you almost couldn't escape from work. So it was nice to take stock and go through the PRD process. Can I just stop and try and reflect on the year that was very different to normal. The PRD process was virtual. It was done over Teams, and that was fine because I think we got so used to that. A bit like just now, we're talking, and this is just like normal, isn't it? If I'll ever be like normal. But I think for me last year, we tried to focus the PRD more on, yes, the important element of PRD and what that all meant, but also as a well-being check-in for staff, because probably because we work in such a kind of dynamic job, it wasn't until I spoke to some staff that they were saying, you know, we're really missing that like human interaction. We're really missing just checking in with somebody or them checking in with us. So we did try and put a nice kind of softer touch on the PRD and encouraged reviewees and reviewers to almost have it as a bit of a virtual coffee morning as well, you know, have a cuppa and a biscuit when you're having that discussion. So that really, I think that helped. It helped me, but I think it helped a lot of other staff going through the PRD process, and I think it won a lot of favours. Actually, I think staff saw a real benefit there in these check-ins. However, this year, obviously, just, you know, still having been in the pandemic, this year certainly in secondary, from my experience working in a secondary school, the summer terms traditionally when the PRDs take place. But what we're saying to staff this year is, look, because of the SQA assessment and moderation process, you know, you've got until October to do your PRDs. And I think a lot of staff have been grateful. They've not had that almost that kind of summer term pressure on them to get through it. And we're hoping that means that staff will engage more positively in it when they're ready to undertake their PRD. So yeah, so the pandemic's been interesting, but I'm glad PRD is still in the mix as well.
We have to be human. We can't, if we push people to their absolute limits, then we're not going to get the best out of them. We're not going to have the best conversations. We'll have staff that are broken and demoralised by it all. And actually, that's not what this is about at all. It's a rich conversation to support professional learning, but also to support our colleagues. And actually, that human connection, that checking in, that because you're right, in a pandemic, you're not having these, you know, hellos and passing conversations, and it's so important to be able to do that and to make sure that space is there. And actually, that kind of approach is so beneficial, because then people engage much more wholeheartedly, and there can be that kind of fear of a PRD being something that's difficult, or you might hear some commentary about your practice. That's not what it's about. But there are so many myths and legends about what PRD and PU are, that people can at times, until they've had these positive experiences, approach them quite negatively. But if we spread that love and that joy of PRD and see that it's a good thing, then we can't but gain sort of positivity and positive momentum going forward with them, can we?
I think that's right, Sharon, and I think you know, just to follow up on your point there, that you know, that the timing of it is absolutely critical, and I think in my experience, anything that you hand over to teachers and say, this is a really important thing that'll help you, let's look at where we can fit it in. Teachers will make space for that, and they'll do it when feels like the right time for them. And I think, yes, as I said at the start, you know, May, June time is traditionally when we do it, which I always think is a bit bonkers, but there's something about reviewing the year that has hooked us into that way of doing it. And for lots of people that works, but I'm finding my experience at the moment is some it depends how you are as a practitioner, doesn't it? Because for some teachers, I think it helps their thinking, it clarifies, and that is supportive for them at this time of year. And for others, it just feels like one too many things. And my message has been very clearly, if it feels like one too many things, this isn't the right time to be doing it. It needs to happen when it feels like the right time for you. And I think if we can get that message to our teachers to say, no, your line manager will suggest when it's to happen, but if that doesn't feel like the right time for you, it's okay to say, no, thanks. We need to fit this in. And, I have to be able to give it the time that it deserves. That's how we make it be authentic. So, I would just encourage teachers to have that professional conversation with whoever the reviewer is, just to say, look, this isn't feeling great to me right now. I'm up to here. Can we rethink and reschedule, because I want it to matter? And as a reviewer, that's very hard to argue with. Obviously, we want it to matter. So I think that's key. Getting the timing of that in the right time is important.
And just while I remember last year we sensed a kind of trepidation from some teachers who had planned their professional learning for the year. They had engaged in practitioner inquiry, and then of course the pandemic hit and all of that stopped, and there was almost this, oh my goodness, I haven't completed what I said I was going to complete. And that is so okay. If you think of the professional learning that every teacher in Scotland has undergone because of the pandemic, learning how to teach digitally, everything, the assessments, everything has been completely turned on its head. Never mind managing their own children at home and that work-life balance, So actually, we're in such a rich place for looking back and having looking back at all the learning we've done. It doesn't matter if it's different from what we planned it to be. So what? We can come back to that if it's worth doing, and if not, we park it, we leave it, and we talk about what we have done. So that flexibility, we have to be flexible as practitioners in our day-to-day work. So we have to be flexible with ourselves as well in what we're doing and the commitments we make to our professional learning. So I want to ask you now about the top tips you would give to colleagues who are about to embark on their PRD, but also, if you could as well, if you could actually also comment on those. You've kind of touched on it just now about those that are feeling the burden just now, but top tips. If you had to say, okay, here's my 3 takeaways for colleagues, what would they be? So Susan, you can start this one.
Oh, that's good, because then I'll see them all, Gordon, and you'll have to think of other ones.
Susan, Gordon, it's all right if you go, okay, tick, tick, tick.
Yeah, you can tick them off. Well, I've got 4, Sharon. Not 3.
Oh goodness, all right, that's fine. I'll let you off.
So tip number 1 is don't forget to do your homework. I think that's really important. You have to, and Gordon touched on that earlier on. A good PRD has an agenda set by the teacher, and you need to have your hit list of things that you want to talk about. If you want it to be insightful and honest, you have to put a bit of time away beforehand to really think, okay, I have to reflect on this. Now for me, that's when I go out walking, or try to get a bit of time with my ear pods in or whatever, and get peace. You just need half an hour to really think, right, what do I want to talk about here? What are the things that are annoying me? And even just notes. I think that's key. You can't just make that up on your way to the meeting room. You have to be ready to come to the conversation to make it worthwhile. So don't forget to do your homework. The second one is making sure there's time to talk, which we've talked lots about, haven't we? But for me, I always feel that a rushed conversation's no conversation at all. I love doing PRDs as a reviewer because that is sacred time and nobody can interrupt. It would take more than a pandemic and more than the average run-of-the-mill problems in a school to be interrupted. You have to get that message out that no, this is a PRD, and find a space in your school where you won't be interrupted, and the phone needs to go off the hook, and it has to be focused time. You should come out of that hour sort of blinking and a bit dazed and back into school land because it's been so concentrated. So
can I just share a top tip with you there? I heard a conversation with a colleague in a local authority who said that when they are undertaking PRDs as head teacher in the school, they assign the emergency person if there's an emergency that happens during that time, so that all the staff know that they are not to be interrupted. If there's an emergency, colleague X is the person to go to because they've got it in hand. So it was just to share that with people if they listen.
Has to be, yeah. I think that at Kingsland we call it running the gauntlet. So you've got to decide who is going to be running the gauntlet, because, you know, if you're busy doing PRDs, that is, as I say, it's sacred time. You don't interrupt a PRD for any reason. It would have to be something really huge. My third top tip is don't shy away from hard questions. And I feel as if we've talked lots about that, but I would just really urge teachers and leaders, you know, anyone that's engaging with our PRD, don't waste those 60 minutes on small talk. Don't skirt around the edges of the hard things. Just look it right in the eye. And if you've got a decent reviewer, that's what they'll encourage you to do anyway. They will scratch the surface, and if they find something, they'll keep going to get you to reflect on what really is happening. So as I say, you need to really get real and just make every minute count. That is the power of PRD, and that means both people come in to the conversation. You know, no one can talk more knowledgeably about your practice than you can, and you have to give yourself space and time to do that, because that's when the amazing stuff will come out. That's when you'll find what you really think, you know, and what you really want to do and what you can make better, and you know, that will ignite in you what you want to do next, and what your plan's going to be, and refresh you and nourish you. So you have to go through that hard bit to come out of it with a plan that's really going to make things better.
Sure.
And our last and final top tip is you should make sure that you feel like you need to lie down by the end of it. I think during the pandemic, I was doing PRDs as a reviewer from home, and I foolishly one day put 4 in one day.
Wow.
And I was absolutely exhausted, and you should come out of your PRD feeling knackered, because you have talked and thought really deeply about your practice, and you've really been challenged, and you've really had to, even if you've got a really good agenda that can do some of that heavy lifting for you, you know, you should feel quite wrung out. And I think that's important, but you should feel exhausted on one level, but on the other side, come out clutching with that plan for what's coming next, and be excited about that, and also feel a little lighter, having been listened to, and hopefully had that that time. I love that as a reviewer, where I'm able to just say, thank you for spending 58 minutes telling me everything you feel about this job and what it means to you, and how it's put you through the ringer again for another year. You know, because I often say to people, in education, we don't deal in spreadsheets, and we don't deal in bank balances. We deal in people. We are wading around, neck deep in relationships and people all day, every day. It's an exhausting profession, and that taking the time to just recognise that and thank people for their contribution. I love that opportunity in a PRD, because we would love to be around every teacher every day, telling them how amazing they are, because they are. Just showing up and doing the best they can every day is an incredible thing. But the PRD is a chance to really formalise that and make that clear. And as I say, for you, you should come out with your plan, and your reviewer should be coming out of it feeling like they've acknowledged everything you do, and they've helped you on your way a little. And I think if you can achieve those things, that is the power of PRD for me. That's why PRDs are so amazing.
Thank you, Susan. Gordon, what are your top tips?
I was just going to say what Susan said. No, no, that's a hard act to follow, Susan.
Gordon.
For me, I think that that it's important that you have an agenda for the meeting. So, for example, in Fife, my local authority, we've got 5 suggested questions, and it just helps you have a suitable structure. And it also, for me, it helps you make sure that you're selling yourself. You're showcasing all the good work that you're doing, some of which your line manager might not even be aware you've done, because we often go about our job not blowing our own trumpets. And you've got a few examples of some of the professional learning that you have undertaken during this session. And I think, going back to a point Sharon made, my professional learning priorities for this session have been almost just put to one side, because they've been overtaken by so many other things. So we're trying to say to staff, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. So yeah, it's that idea, the appropriate agenda and selling yourself and showcasing yourself. For when you're preparing, as Susan said, when you're preparing for your PRD, it's important that you give it time. You know, I'm sure there'll be time set aside in your working time agreement for this, but it's really important you give it time and you use an appropriate self-evaluation tool. Now there's many on the MyPL GTC website. I've been looking at them. We in my school, we encourage staff to make sure they're using an appropriate GTC standard. And I think that's a really powerful way of really reflecting on your practice and how that meets the standard. So whatever self-evaluation toolkit you use, there's many out there, you use that, because that can actually be a great way of reflecting on you as a practitioner. And also reflecting on where you want to go in the next few years of your career. And then finally, for me, my third point is try to have considered 3 professional learning priorities for the coming session. Probably not any more than 3. I don't know if you would agree with that, but probably 3 good priorities for the coming session, so that you're and you know, you might have identified 3 and your reviewer adjusts 1 or 2 of them a little bit for your own benefit, or says, actually, do you know what, stick with those 2 rather than trying to do 3. But at least you're going into the meeting kind of armed with what you'd like to achieve, what you'd like to take forward, and you're getting that good advice from your reviewer about if they agree with where you see yourself. Because I don't know about you, but teachers, in my experience, are very critical of themselves and sometimes quite harsh on themselves. So it's nice to have that reviewer there to sometimes just say, actually, you know, you're doing much better than you think. So they'd be my top tips.
Absolutely, thank you. Just while you're talking about self-evaluation, Gordon, my mantra at the moment is to not just self-evaluate against the standards, but to do across the standards, because I don't think we should ever pigeonhole ourselves into one standard. Obviously, we have the standard for full registration as our benchmark, but actually we can be leaders in our classrooms. We are leaders in our classrooms, and if our context and the work that we're doing, or an area of the curriculum that we're leading on, although we might not have a formal leadership role, if we're doing that and we can see ourselves in it, or even if we aspire to that, then we should be self-evaluating against that and using that. So for me, when I do my PRD, I do like a pizza sort of slice of different standards and just pick, so that it's really personal to me as an individual, as a practitioner. And I certainly wouldn't shy away from other people taking that approach as well. I think that's quite a healthy approach, and actually one that stops maybe teachers who have the potential of them pigeonholing themselves because they don't feel that they should, when actually who shouldn't? We should all be, you know, seeing where we can go and seeing how we can be our best selves in our work. So absolutely, self-evaluation is hugely important. It's where the questions start, isn't it? So so I'd like to thank you both hugely for your time and your commitment and your great chat about PRD today. I think anyone listening to this recording will take away some really good insight and some useful and helpful and reassuring information about what PRD is. It's not an extra. It's something that's our entitlement, and it's key to teacher professionalism, and we need to make sure that we take those opportunities when we can to be heard, to be validated, and to strive our futures in our career that we've chosen. So I thank you both very much for your time and offerings today. And all the very best for the rest of the term, not long till the holidays. So looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
You.
Thanks, Sharon.
See you later.
Thank you. Take care.